Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We're live with another episode of Going Elliptic, where we're talking with interesting people right across the spectrum of crypto, from traders and analysts to fund managers and even developers. Thanks for joining. And as a reminder, this is all educational content. We want you to chime in the chat, ask questions, but in no way will any of this be trading or investment advice. Hey, Shanky.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, it's very exciting times in the market for the opposite reason of the last few years. So it's all red, not green.
Exciting indeed, and full of drama for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, obviously in times like this, people are searching for, insights and hungry to learn more. So hopefully we can add to that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I think our guest is quite awesome. You know, he comes with a lot of rich background in just analyzing the markets and understanding, and been in that for a bit. So we'll definitely look forward to learning from him. And we've got a chartered session too later today. So we will also spend a few minutes covering the markets ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. And I think also having a guest on that watches the markets all the time, really help us to get a finger on the pulse today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's bring him on.
Without further ado, introducing Josh, and he's a trader and analyst with BNC, and also co-host of the Ledger Status podcast. Welcome, Josh.
Paul, Shanky, thanks for having me on this very sad, turbulent day. We all watched our hero die before our eyes. Elon quickly becoming the villain. I think, at this point, the big thing is he's annoying not just BTC maxis, but I think he's just annoying everybody at this point. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think it's fair to say that we don't want the markets moving on some random tweets from a billionaire. I think it's pretty fair to say, right, guys?
Oh yeah, 100%. In fact, I think like he's playing games. He's kind of, having a bizarre sense of humor at some level.
So the markets were weak-ish, right? They weren't as strong as they had been over the past couple days. And then you've got Elon spouting nonsense nonstop, and then there's people reacting on that, and then there's it's snowballing. The more and more he just spews trash. I said this in the pre-show, but it's like there's a madman on the loose in the town square, just swinging his machete. Just everybody, it's just so. Yeah, ETH actually took a bigger hit so far today than BTC has, probably because BTC has already pulled back pretty significantly over the past week. But man, oh man, you hate to see. I hate to see markets move like this. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess it points also to the danger of narratives, right? In crypto, we often try to ascribe market upward trends to something that's happening, and downward trends, usually it's governments or regulators or taxes. But when you ascribe too much to the power of Elon's initial tweets of Tesla buying and accepting Bitcoin, then on the flip side, you're just exposing yourself to that being the narrative that brings the downfall. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I said similar when we were talking about ICO treasuries. It's very, exact same thing. You have these treasuries with hundreds of thousands of ETH, and then eventually they're going to liquidate. Maybe Elon liquidated already. Maybe he's liquidating over the past couple of days. I don't know. I'm sure the way his mood has been, he's just going to sell everything. I don't think he's going to be buying any BTC. So yeah, we're just setting up for, the Gini coefficient rising is not bullish in general. It may feel good on the way up, right? Like the ICO treasuries did, but then we had 2018 when the ICO treasuries just kept spewing ETH more supply than there was demand, and it just seems over the past couple of days nobody has an appetite to buy much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're feeling it. We're feeling it right now. This is it.
That's true. And I think that in a market that has been fairly bullish and volatile over the last few months, small things tend to have much bigger impact than they normally would, right? So both ways, right? There is one narrative, one little news item that says so-and-so has bought Bitcoin, or, this is what is going to happen. And suddenly the market reacts very positively to it, and, vice versa. Like, for example, the whole Elon story, one of the bits that I always doubted from day one when I heard that, very first tweet was how many people really would buy, Teslas with Bitcoin. I don't know. I don't even know if it's a practical decision to start with. Forget whether BTC is good or bad. We're not even talking about that. But it just made news, right? And everybody was like, yeah, there you go. Now we'll have BTC and, as a mode of payment for Teslas. Like, firstly, Tesla itself is not the highest selling car to start with. It's not like everybody and their neighbor is buying a Tesla. And then the next thing is, are they all buying using BTC? So I think that narrative itself was partially faulty, so to speak, in my opinion. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's all PR. It's not like many people are buying Teslas anyway, but it's not like they have that many to sell anyway.
Right. Exactly.
There's just a whole bunch of issues with all of it. But the big thing is when you see these pitch decks, or not pitch decks, but slide decks, I guess you'd call them, from banks about crypto. There's always this slide about, these are the number of companies that have accepted BTC, and it's always nearly blank. And so when we start filling up these narratives from like legacy finance of who's using it, what are they doing with it, are they doing something other than just buying and holding, that's when it doesn't really matter what it is, or if you think people are going to spend BTC, that's when people start to believe it more and more. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy from that regard. But we see people spend BTC. We saw that in 2013 on Overstock when people, Newegg as well. Mm-hmm. People love to sell BTC at the top. They're generally pretty good at it too. Just, not traders per se, but it's when it becomes life-changing, then that's a pretty good sign that we're getting there, right? And you can look at metrics for that sort of thing, but there was a lot of activity on Overstock in 2013 towards the top of people buying all sorts of housewares and stuff like that. So I don't think it's unreasonable that people would be buying Teslas, but it's, we're going to see rumors, we're going to see headlines. There's going to be a headline tomorrow in Bloomberg, if there isn't already, that he's sold all his BTC. We don't know that for a fact yet, but it certainly seems like it.
Yeah, I mean, there was one tweet he replied to about a couple of hours ago where he just one word, indeed, but the tweet was insinuating that he would have sold down the Bitcoin. So let's see once it's actually publicized.
Yeah, it's just odd. It's
go ahead, Josh. Yeah.
It's odd that he would say all that he's saying if he hasn't sold it all, because why would you bother saying anything? If you're holding $1 billion worth of BTC and all you're saying is making the price go down, why would you say anything at all? Just wait. I know there's some legal reasons maybe that he's saying what he's saying, but man, I don't know. He's just completely unhinged, really. And this isn't anything new from him. Somebody made a good comparison about his Messiah complex, where he has to go in and try to fix everything. With the Thai submarine thing, which was successful, thankfully, and I forget the other example. Oh, the Flint water crisis, which is still ongoing in the United States. But yeah, so he makes all these comments about Doge today. And he just keeps going, right? He just keeps engaging with everybody and it's I don't know what else can you do. Well, watch it and just just laugh. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, to shift gears a little bit, while the drama continues with Elon and all the stuff that's going on today, I do feel that I think the narrative has been very positive and interesting for a few things in crypto this season, right? Beyond the fact that, hey, this is life changing, this is going to be the next currency, to a little more, what I would say, detail centric, a little bit more, closer to some use cases, right? For example, what DeFi has been doing. And if you start looking at this whole spectrum of DeFi tokens, I think that has really caught the fancy of a lot of traditional finance, right? Part fear, part, I guess, excitement, part anxiety, right? They're all trying to figure out how does this DeFi thing play into the puzzle. So what's your take on that? As an analyst, you've been watching this, I'm sure. Do you think DeFi is for real? Is that a narrative that is more aligned with, transformation of traditional finance, or is it just yet another speculative bet at this point in time?
Yeah, let me start with the least exciting parts for me are anything that's just a flat out governance token is the least exciting for me. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what most of these are. ZRX was a prime example of this very early on, where they didn't really have a use case, so they had to invent use cases. That's fine, but initially it isn't really going to move the needle if it's just a governance token. Nobody cares, right? Until Maker started burning tokens, right, and showing revenue and whatever else they're doing this year. Nobody really cared about that token. I mean, it just languished. So now it's more of a rising tide raises all boats. Sushi, Uni, 1inch, all these new tokens over the past couple months are tacking on use cases week over week, which is exactly what they should be doing. And most of them are also going multi-chain, which is exactly what they should be doing. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for DeFi to keep growing. I think it's still super early because even when I'm using stuff on Enzyme or I'm using stuff on Matcha, just personally, I'm getting failed transactions. I'm getting stuck transactions. It's just not a completely pleasant experience for somebody who's been in crypto for a long time, So I can see how it would turn away new people into crypto. People who are basically just on Robinhood or Coinbase, they just kind of stay in their walled garden and they don't really use crypto the way it's kind of meant to be used. So I think we got a long ways to go. I think we're definitely getting there for sure.
Right.
And I don't necessarily mean that in like a price dynamic. I just mean just the usability. It's the interoperability between all of the stuff, Compound, Aave, that's amazing. That's like the best part of it. But just like the actual practicality, like you're talking about, is at times dubious, definitely.
Well, and I guess that's also perhaps part of why people are looking to, you mentioned Enzyme there, and there's a few others like DHedge or Token Sets, but they're looking for people or products that can help them to kind of manage it, because it is a bit too complicated for themselves. Is that something you see kind of growing with the type of investors who might have some crypto exposure but not want to get dirty with DeFi?
Yeah, it's definitely easier, I think, for most people to just dump money into a pool or dump it into Enzyme or Token Sets or whatever. And even from a gas fee perspective, it's simpler. So I think that's very attractive to people who sort of want to get involved but don't want to do everything themselves. I definitely advise people to like look around, look at 1inch, look at Sushi, look at all the pools, look at Curve, look at Balancer. Play around with it. Doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money doing all this stuff, but look at the options, look at the AMM pools, check out Uniswap and see what a disaster version 3 has been for them. Check out all this stuff. I think it's important, especially if you're in crypto right now, you're super early to see all this stuff evolve over time. So yeah, I definitely recommend people do a lot of a lot of just their own due diligence and just looking around, at the DeFi ecosystem. Because I was kind of late. I wasn't really into it until mid last year, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, and what changed your mind on DeFi? Because I know, you were kind of going, hey, this is a lot of play money, or even money Lego, but it shouldn't be used in the way that it was being used. And then you have come around a bit more. So perhaps, give us some insight into what convinced you.
Yeah, DEXs were always interesting as a trader, obviously. And again, it came back to the token stuff. Like the tokens, they didn't really have much going for them at the time, at least something like ZRX. But yeah, when I start to see like the AMM models play out and the liquidity mining, or seeing what impermanent loss actually is and seeing all this stuff play out, it definitely becomes more real. So that's probably what changed my mind. I started on like Mooniswap, which is the 1 inch. Yeah. 1 inch. I don't even know what to call it at this point. The old 1 inch aggregator. I don't even know. Started on there. Definitely wasn't on Uniswap, but yeah, I don't know. So all this stuff has a purpose. I think most people aren't going to go to like these native websites unless they have a like a home to sushi, or they like Uniswap. They're just going to stick to like Zerion or DeBank or some other API feed, right? They're not going to fool around with Uniswap. They're going to go to Matcha because it's just simpler, right?
I find it's funny as well. There's some parallel again back to the ICOs where everyone was told, kind of go to my Ether wallet and do this step, that step. You're in the ICO, right? And a lot of projects are saying, kind of go to, whether it's PancakeSwap or Uniswap or others, put in this token address and do this. And then the users don't really understand even the platform they're using or what other alternatives they might be. They're just kind of stuck with what they were told to do.
Yeah, PancakeSwap is just a giant mess to me. Just least common denominator, completely centralized. It was kind of just right place, right time. ETH didn't get its act together quick enough with the fees, and so that's the incentives were aligned so that it made sense for people to start doing stuff on PancakeSwap, right? I didn't.
Yeah, totally. But there is another part, Josh, that at least I think about is just the high yields, the astronomical yields, and a lot of passive money, right? So, of course, there are some who truly believe in call it the DeFi mission, but there are some there just for the yields. If they've put a little amount and it's earning them enough money, why not? Like at least that's a school of thought that I've heard.
No, yeah, I agree completely. Maybe people like us know too much, where we look at all the issues with Cake and PancakeSwap and all the rugs and whatever. You're right. People, they just look at the APYs and they think, oh, 12,000%, right? Why not? And then the next day they lose all their money or whatever. And
right.
for people like you and me, maybe if we were to lose a dime in that system, we'd say, man, we are so stupid for letting that happen because we knew better,
Exactly.
So we avoid that because we're not even risk averse. We just know better, And it's the same way with projects on ETH. There are plenty of DeFi projects that have issues, that I don't trust my money either. And it took a while for me to get around to parking money in Aave, parking money in Comp, getting behind those sort of things. Mm-hmm. And that was part of my own like DeFi transition as well, just accepting that stuff isn't going to like disappear, right?
True. Yeah. And then, going from ETH as the primary chain for DeFi, there's certainly a lot of motion with cross-chain story, right? With so much action right now. I think you mentioned that too. So you think that's where the story's headed? The whole cross-chain world is going to become more important than ETH alone. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, we saw this with BTC a lot as well, where the fees just got so high. LTC became a popular spillway throughput. So I feel like in this specific case, Cake is a good example of where the flows from ETH have been going because the fees were just too high. I mean, the fees are still high, really. Like realistically, the gas that we pay for Enzyme and the to actually do what I want to do and pay the fees we need to pay It's not a good feeling, you know. I don't want to pay, 0.2 plus ETH on a transaction through Enzyme, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes that's just what we have to do. So that's definitely painful. That is definitely, and it gets in the way of me doing stuff that I'd otherwise want to do or be doing more frequently, certainly. Because I have to calculate. I have to calculate. Is it worth it? Is the fee actually worth doing what I want to do here? Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, even knowing that that EIP 1559 is coming in July, and that there will be a different fee mechanism, still doesn't make it feel any better right now when it's high, right? It's kind of maybe July is going to be too late, and we will be in a bear market by then. So.
It's quite possible, right? With everything going on, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even convinced that EIP 1559 is going to do anything for fees specifically. Raising the gas ceiling was a massive improvement, and then came all those Dogecoin scam clones, and it didn't matter. And then that didn't matter, right? You widen the road, and you just get more cars. So yeah, we do need scaling initiatives. I don't think EIP 1559 is going to do much for gas. I think it's going to make everybody super bullish ETH, which is great. But until layer 2 gets adopted by these exchanges, then we're going to actually see something happen. Like SegWit, it's the same thing. It's the same story. We've seen this play out. Until we enable batching or some higher level processing mechanisms for ETH, it's just going to be super painful for everybody.
Yeah,
and that's going to hurt DeFi because it just prices people out.
It's true. It's very expensive. Another sentiment that I've seen sort of emerge, a little more marginal, but certainly spoken about, is that when it comes to ETH and its price action, it might end up going the way of buy the hype and sell the reality. So when EIP 1559 really happens, it's like, hey, actually nothing happened. Like, it's behind us. So you might start seeing bearish momentum instead of actually people getting excited about ETH. What's your take on that? Do you think that's a viable proposition or a story?
I mean, it's possible. Really, this price action all of May, since the beginning of May on ETH, hasn't really made much sense to me. Just because it's just straight up. I don't know if we're necessarily seeing the leverage or the open interest rising to the degree that it would require the kind of moves that ETH has moved, but I could be wrong there. It's a bit surprising to see, at least it was, to see BTC going in the opposite direction of ETH. Not that that's ever not impossible. It's just super unusual to see that. That to me says that there was some sort of disconnect going on with the market in general. And I think to see where Doge is at, I mean, it's still, I talk about this too, to see Doge at 50 cents still, like, what are we doing,
Yeah, I don't get Doge. I don't know, Paul, if you get Doge, but I don't get it at all.
It's a BTC fork, and it's got a bunch of vulnerabilities on it, It's like,
exactly.
I don't get it, other than that it's accessible to people, I don't get it.
It almost feels like it's a power of memes at some level.
Totally, because GME, the GME of the stock, is still at its 50 cent Doge equivalent. It hasn't retraced all of that price action. And something else that's worth thinking about is what's going to happen next year for DeFi when they maybe don't have a strong January or have a weak December. Because really this January was kind of everything exploded, right? So DeFi looks super hot right now, but it's always worth keeping in mind that reality check of, maybe this is just what a bull market is, right? So I want to see DeFi go through a bear market cycle to see what actually survives. I think it'll do fine. I think a lot of this stuff will be here to stay, but I think some of it's definitely going to be straight to zero for sure.
Yeah, well, if we're looking at the data and perhaps total value locked over just say the price of any one token, do you expect that in a bear market total value locked will significantly shrink proportional to price, or could we see that the value that's there sticks around?
Well, in bear markets, we typically see volume drop off a cliff. So that's going to be troublesome for all of the DEXs, for all the AMM related stuff. So there goes all those incentives. You know, you're going to be taking these drawdowns on pooling, plus you're going to be getting less rewards. So it's going to be just compounding effect for people, I think. So those are going to have some issues. And most people, you know, a lot of people leave in the bear market too. So that's going to have another effect on everything as well. So it's tough. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I think the lending and borrowing stuff is going to do good. I think stuff like Maker, Comp, Aave, SNX, I think all that's positioned to do well. DEXs maybe less so. DEX aggregators maybe the most vulnerable. Oracles probably will do fine. And then some of this other stuff, like the wrappers, like Ren is probably vulnerable to that as well, just because less people are going to be involved in crypto in general. But I don't know. The more I read about Sushi, I like, again, back to this multi-chain thing. I like that Sushi doesn't care that, you know, they're not just these ETH fanboys like Hayden seems to be. And that's fine. That may work out for Uniswap, but if I'm like trying to take a bet on something, I want somebody with the reality of, yeah, okay, we're a big tent, right? That's what Sushi has basically said.
Mm-hmm.
That we're just going to incorporate everything and do the best we can. We have staking, we have more than just pooling, and we have all this other stuff. So I think the additional use cases should help buffer against those bear market effects. But I think some of these projects are just going to have a tough time.
Yeah, I definitely see the projects that embrace the broadest possible community are going to perhaps, you know, do better over time. So yeah, you pointed out Sushi Swap, even 1inch supports multiple chains there and growing. And I think Balancer and a few others are heading in a similar trajectory. So yeah, that'll be really interesting to watch, as it doesn't become all about ETH is where all of that DeFi value is locked.
Yeah, it goes back to like the voice exit loyalty paradigm where, you know, if you don't like what's happening on ETH, you don't have to just like have a hissy fit and panic, and you can just go somewhere else, right? Like there are so many other options now. Doesn't mean they're better. It just means that, you know, Solana, Matic, Dot, whatever else, you know, there are tons of stuff, Avalanche, there's tons of stuff going on elsewhere where if you just think ETH is trash, right, you can just move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, I think that if you look at the Generation 1 ETH challenges, right, which happened with EOS, Tron, and a few others, that didn't quite take off because there were really no viable apps there. I mean, they had yet another chain, expecting somehow to attract yet another set of developers and, you know, then make things happen. But now in this new world, the ones that you listed, there are viable things to do. And with this whole, you know, Sushi and multiple other apps, you know, 1inch and others bridging across chains, from an end user standpoint, yeah, at some point in time, they wouldn't care about the deep underlying platform ETH as much as people don't care about, you know, the deep underlying network or the OS that they run when they access their application, right? Like it becomes just a thing that is behind the scenes that is doing its work, right? So
yeah, 100%. And that's how Lightning Network succeeds, if it ever does succeed. It just has to be completely in the background. Just, you know, no one needs to know about it.
Right.
It's just that's another thing. It's just too complex to use, even for me, you know, for you guys as well. It's such a burdensome experience to like deal with all that stuff. So they either need to simplify that whole experience or just have it running, you know, in the background where people aren't even aware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's true.
Totally. Now, switching gears again onto kind of more of the trader analyst side, and we've got a really good question here. So Josh, you are the, you know, foremost expert in the world on Ichimoku. You know, I'll say it right there. And yeah, basically, how did you fall into that? Tell us a bit more about the story and how you've been able to kind of use that to really create some strong signals from crypto markets.
Yeah, I think in general, most people, when they get into crypto, they either make or lose a bunch of money super quickly. And for some people, that scares them, and they think to themselves, why? What happened? How can I figure this out? Like on days like today or all of January, right? Like I made all this money. Why? What happened, right? TA, technical analysis, is one way to help understand what's going on. Some people would argue help predict what's going on or be slightly leading to what's going on. So that's where I found TA helpful for me, is to just make sense of, like it's kind of like a roadmap of what's going on or expectations as far as the possibilities on a decision tree. That's my favorite analogy. And cloud was one of those things that made a lot of sense to me visually. It made a lot of sense to me on back testing, forward testing. It's made sense to me for years as far as what the signals were, what it was trying to tell me. And for any indicator, if you slow it down a lot, it tends to have a much better hit rate. So that just means the signals play out more times than they don't. And with the cloud is, just with any indicator, the cloud is basically a moving average type of system. And if you double those moving averages or adjust them to whatever style you prefer trading, they do better than the single settings typically. That'll vary from coin to coin, but that's why I switched it. And somebody was asking in the chat, Datamax, yeah, the signals are slow on purpose, right? I don't want something that's going to tell me to go in and out of a trade over and over again. This whole BTC move on the daily chart from October 2020 to a couple days ago was a giant long entry and exit signal. For ETH, it's the 4 hour. You might have to move around what you're looking at. It doesn't make it any less valid, but when the market speeds up, you're better off moving down the timeframes in that regard. But yeah, I think in general why it's so successful is because it's just super high data capture, and it doesn't really care about the stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis. It's more of a weekly, monthly, 2-month basis, where it's looking at broad trends, that sort of thing. So it'll change from person to person. It depends what you want to trade, blah, blah, blah. But for me, my style, that's just what made the most sense.
What are some of your favorite indicators, if I may ask, Josh? What are the classes of indicators that you like the most?
Yeah, I like trend. Anything that's trend related. MAs, EMAs, cloud, obviously. That's kind of it. I don't really use that many things. Pitchfork is another example where you determine a rate of change within a market, and the market tends to stay within those boundaries pretty highly, significantly. What else do I use? Pivot points. Again, these are mathematical. They're determined at the beginning of the month or the beginning of the year. I like things that aren't subjective. So Elliott waves aren't for me. Harmonic patterns aren't for me. RSI and MACD, those are okay. Those are oscillators. But in general, I really don't use too much stuff. Chart patterns are very good as well, just gauging bias in the market. So even like leading into the stuff that Elon was saying, the whole week before, I was waiting for this short entry to trigger on BTC. And unluckily or unfortunately, it triggered the same day that Elon said, BTC is bad for the environment or whatever he said. So I didn't get a chance to put that on the way I wanted it to, and now it's just sort of playing out. And yeah, so even though you see stuff ahead of time with TA like that, you don't always get the exact entries that you want. But at the very least, it told me that the market was kind of in trouble a week or two ago when we had that signal on the daily cloud.
Right.
Yeah, and you made another call last Monday, kind of on ETH for your Monday setup. And yeah, basically saying from 4K, you're going to start dollar cost averaging out, just for yourself personally, obviously not advice to anyone else, but how's that going?
Yeah, so I've been selling. I sold a bunch of stuff. What day was it? A couple days ago. It's like BTC was 50K. I didn't get out at the top. Most people rarely get out exactly at the top anyway, but Cloud told me to sell at 55K. I said, no, I know better. I was wrong. I'm usually wrong. Cloud's usually right. ETH, on the other hand, was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where it looked like it was just so overbought that just too much too fast. And anytime you see that, you get in trouble with people getting too greedy at the top, and then everything tends to get crumbling down. The MA multiplier is another good one I like, which is the one I was looking at that was saying to me that ETH, it was just too hot. Price is just moving up too much too soon. So right now I like 3K as far as the price target for ETH. If we actually retrace that much, that's where I'll be buying again. BTC, however, BTC is a little rougher because there's no clean. The 200-day moving average is at 42,000, and that has to hold in order for this thing to remain intact. We haven't been below that since April 2020 on BTC.
Right.
So BTC is a little rougher for sure.
Yeah. No, I was just going to chime in and add to that if the 200 MA gets questioned, well, then we are wondering where the trend is headed, right? It's more fundamental sort of step back and see what happens to the price.
Yeah, and speaking of fundamentals, if we look at the transaction data or daily active addresses, all of which influences my trading as well, all that stuff is still at all-time highs for ETH.
Right.
So it's hard to be super bearish when you see that. When you see transaction activity just day over day, week over week, month over month, all-time high, all-time high, all-time high. The other thing to pay attention to as well is the net reserves on exchanges, which for ETH continue to decline. BTC is a bit of a rounded bottom as far as exchange reserves are concerned, but still both of those are pretty divergent, arguably, from price action right now. So that gives me a little bit more hopium that we're not going to just get crushed to zero,
Right. At least not yet.
Not yet. There was some Tether news that came out that was interesting, that their reserves are maybe riskier than people thought they were.
Right.
And there was some analysis or arguments for these bigger players needing to account for that risk in their models. And maybe that's why we're also seeing the selling that we're seeing. But it's never just one thing, and the market was looking for a reason, and it got plenty of reasons, right? So here we are today.
That's true. Well, yeah, well said. Well, going back to the ETH price a little bit. So, everyone's very keenly looking at the 5K mark, just because it's a nice rounded off number, but also because, there was the expectation that last all-time high was about 1,500 or so. So at least, 3 times that, which is what BTC also at least went as far as that, roughly, right? From its 20K to roughly 60K. So do you think it's coming? 5K, is any of your analysis saying that, or you feel like that's a stretch?
Yeah, no, 5K is certainly possible. And obviously days like today make you think, what are you doing in crypto, right? But yeah, as long as we can recover and just stop the bleeding, because right now it's just been slow bleed, basically. Hour after hour, I wake up, we're lower. I go to bed, we're lower. Just nonstop. So if we can find buyers somewhere for any reason and reconsolidate, there's no rule saying we can't go higher. Even if you look at ETH in July 2017 and then January 2018, that's a good example of a possibility as far as this reconsolidation and then another all-time high. And that consolidation period took 150 days. So it's not going to happen quick if it does happen. That's probably the biggest thing to realize. The faster this goes, the higher the likelihood that this just explodes downward, because there's just not enough time for people to reaccumulate. But yeah, 5K is certainly possible. I'm looking at the MA multiplier right now. It's currently 4867 is the high. So that's going to keep moving up day over day. So in a couple weeks, that'll be at 5K. So yeah, I like that. It's not impossible for sure. The obvious question is, do we go to 3K first?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm trading it like we're going to 3K first, because I'll be buying at 3K. Even if we don't go to 3K, I still think there's going to be plenty of evidence to dip your toe back in again. ETH just needed a break. It's just too much too soon.
Yeah. My sense also is if BTC goes further down, breaks the 200 MA, right, and it's below 40K for whatever reason, right, just because of the bearish momentum, which doesn't seem unlikely or impossible by any means, right? It's possible, just the sentiment could pull it down. That might bring ETH down and everybody else down with it too, because, just generally the sentiment would turn more bearish, right? At least for the intermediate term.
If we break 42, then I start looking for shorts again on BTC, because at that point, this bull trend since basically Corona March is definitely over at that point. And it's funny, you see all these people buying the dip and buying the dip. They have just an infinite amount of capital to buy every single dip they ever see, apparently. Whereas I'm thinking to myself, where price is inside of the cloud, so that is a no trade zone. You basically want to be short when we're below the cloud and long when we're above the cloud. So if we get back above the cloud, then that'll be a signal to be long again. Right now, that signal just isn't there for BTC. So yeah, it's the more I look at this BTC chart, the worse it looks, certainly. But that doesn't mean it's over just yet. It just means we've gone from obviously bullish to obviously neutral at this point.
Right. See, there's also the other Elon factor, if you may, right? When this whole Elon excitement first began, right? Hey, he's going to buy BTC, and then the whole support for BTC. BTC price was roughly hovering in the 35K type zone. It had gone up and come down. So my sense is that a lot of people entered the market at that price, roughly around 35K. So if the price drop now gets closer to that entry point for a bunch of people who maybe first time crypto, who knows, right? What brought them here? So they might start rethinking and saying, hey, do I just make whatever little profit is left, or avoid making a loss and leave the market and go, at least temporarily? And if that happens, then we might see some cascading effect potentially.
Yeah, so far we're not seeing any strong bullish rejection of the down move. It's just been, people have been happy to sell. I'm the same way. I'm happy to sell anything until 42K. I'm happy to sell it, because at that point, basically the risk reward for a 1x short decreases significantly, because we've mean reverted at that point. But I think there are a lot more people obviously looking to sell than buy here, and just not a lot of excitement on the buying end yet. So that's something to look for, definitely.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool, Josh. Well, yeah, that's been really insightful, and you've shared a lot there. We do have one fun piece we do towards the end of each segment, and that's rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Gosh, I hope so.
Cool. All right. If you had to choose one of these to trade, would it be NFTs, DeFi, or Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Nice. In one sentence, what's common between the 2017 and the 2021 bull run?
Euphoric scams.
Cool.
Funny but true.
It is, right?
And in your opinion, what's the single biggest use case for crypto?
Debanking the banked, I think, is actually a bigger use case than banking the unbanked. A lot of us in the crypto space are a prime example of that.
Absolutely. All right. So complete the sentence. DeFi makes.
DeFi makes playing around with ETH a lot easier.
Yeah. It definitely is fun.
Yeah, I mean, there were threads about this a couple days ago, a week ago maybe, but I don't buy ETH and think to myself I'm going to hold it. I buy ETH to think to myself I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for fees. I'm going to do I'm going to put it to work, right? Like that's why people buy ETH for the most part.
Yeah, I definitely think we're seeing that. Last one, what's a piece of advice you'd give to a new trader entering into crypto?
Piece of advice. Go slow. Protect yourself from yourself. Don't use high leverage. Do a lot of learning first, for sure.
Great. Yeah, no, definitely. It's an odd time for anyone joining now because, there's just been so much up and then now so much down in the volatility. Not a great time if you're just entering into space and trying to learn it. But hopefully things stabilize again soon.
Yeah, hopefully the madman is out of the town square fairly soon here. I'm hoping for one last capitulatory spike where anybody who wants to sell gets it over with all at the same time. Because like I said earlier in the pod, when we see this like slow bleed day over day over day, it's people like me, people like whoever, they're either getting stopped out or they're just seeing this thinking, okay, I'm going to sell more, I'm going to sell more, I'm going to sell more. A lot of people go into capital preservation mode, right? They hate seeing losing percentages of their net worth day over day over day. So until it just spikes down, this could just keep going for another week or two, really.
Yeah, good point.
It's going to be interesting to watch. And thank you as well, Josh, for taking some time out of your day. And we'll also drop in the show notes if you're interested in hearing more of Josh's analysis. I will put some links there for where you typically put things under Brave New Coin for your weekly trading analysis and ledger status as well.
Yeah, so we have 12 videos a week for Brave New Coin. I've got a weekly open podcast I do with Brian and Luke and Don Alt, and then Ledgercast on Friday, and then I do my own videos, and then we have Enzyme. Check that out if you're interested. Obviously a mess of a day today on the P&L, but if the thing about DeFi, I think the price is almost irrelevant. I'm hesitant to say something like that, but it's like if you believe in DeFi having a future, then this isn't investment advice, but I would advise seriously considering putting some money into it. I'll say it like that.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Great. All right. Thanks for that, Josh. Hopefully we'll get you back on at some point as well. And just kind of look back on the time it was, kind of middle of May 2021.
Yeah, hopefully in a slightly better day.
We hope so too. Yes, absolutely. And we'd love to have you back on. I think there is plenty that the listeners can learn from you, and we can also have fun just talking about so many things, the market and crypto at large. So
sure.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for
Right. So Shashank, what else have we got going on today?
Let's do a chartered session, right? That's the usual weekly one that we do. And the market is in an interesting state, to say the least. So let's at least do a quick one and try and understand and make sense of it and see where it's headed.
Excellent. And yeah, if you're tuning in for the first time, do follow us either on YouTube or Twitter at Going Elliptic. And we've also got a intermittent kind of newsletter there with some of the more detailed analysis, which is Going Elliptic on Substack. So yeah, we hope you'll follow us, and we hope you found this episode useful as we keep interviewing more people, yeah, in the world of crypto. For our charted session, that'll probably be live streaming in about 10 minutes, right, Shanky?
Yeah, let's do it in about 10 minutes, for sure.
Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you then.
See you guys.